I'll just pick up where Karen left off and talk about the Gulf, especially some of the political and strategic implications of this unprecedented, almost a black swan event that we're now going through on a worldwide level, not on a regional level, it's on a worldwide level. And if anything is a definition of a black swan, surely this is it. And I mean, firstly, it puts everything into perspective. It puts into perspective the squabble within the GCC between Qatar and its neighboring states, Saudi Arabia, UAE and Bahrain, which has been ongoing since 2017 and which as recently as February 2020 saw the Qatari health minister reportedly being denied permission to enter Saudi Arabia to take part in a meeting of GCC health ministers. It puts into perspective the sort of political differences among 6 states on the Arabian Peninsula, which history has shown that when there's a common external issue, they realize they have more together than they have apart. It even puts into perspective the escalation of tension with Iran. And we forget now, because 2020 has been so extraordinary, that we began the year with concerns and fears of a new conflict in the Gulf between Iran and the US. And actually on that occasion, the Gulf states were very clear that the time was not right for a conflict in the Gulf, and they were urging de-escalatory measures, in part because of the incidents last year, that the pattern of attacks on maritime and energy targets, which really shocked, I think, a lot of Gulf governments. So there's very much a message should be, and I mean, one would hope that the longer this goes on, the message will be coordination, not confrontation, is the way forward. Now, on the other hand, as in the European Union with the European states, each Gulf government has largely adopted national level policy responses. They've each tried to take decisions at a national level rather than pooling them across the GCC, as again, we've seen in other instances when the GCC has been marginalized as well. Clearly right now, when we're still engaged in the kind of immediacy and the urgency of trying to flatten the curve, that may be a wise thing to do. But if and when we begin to move into a post-flattening phase, it will be instructive to see if the GCC can come back and if the sort of region-wide coordination of effort can begin to sort of develop again, especially when there will be coordination of action required, especially as Karen had said, we will see widening inequalities perhaps among the GCC states. The impact of this, the economic impact of COVID-19 will not be felt uniformly. It will be felt harder in some countries, and even within some countries another. And that's another implication of this pandemic and of the crisis. It could easily widen inequalities, fissures and fault lines within states as well as between states. And we've already seen widening of those fault lines over the past decade with the previous oil price decline, with the responses to the Arab Spring. And so anything that widens the inequalities could have implications. One immediate issue that comes to mind is citizen-expat relationships. We've seen already in Kuwait, for example, some tension rising up between citizens who are almost blaming kind of migrant workers or expatriates for sort of importing transmission into the GCC. And of course, the fact that many workers, many laborers live in close proximity to one another in conditions in camps which may not be as healthy as could be. If there's a situation where we see explosions of cases among migrant communities, among labor camps, and we could easily see a situation where tensions begin to build in terms of expat citizen ties, especially perhaps in some of the smaller Gulf states where expatriates form the significant majority in the population and have always been viewed with a degree of reservation by some of the citizen communities. So that could also be an issue. And more broadly as well, if governments fail to get a grip, if some of the initial remedial measures, some of the lockdowns or the curfews fail to slow the spread of the virus, the spread of the transmission, we could see a situation where governments try and seek external scapegoats to blame. I mean, we've seen in the past as well how in times of crisis, the initial or the instinctive response is to try and find a scapegoat to deflect attention from potential political and economic shortcomings at a domestic level. We saw that in 2011, for example, when the initial instinctive response to the upheaval in Bahrain, for example, was to blame Iran, blame Iranian meddling. And then in 2012, when we saw unrest spreading to other parts of the Gulf, such as Kuwait, it was suddenly the Muslim Brotherhood, which was the external organization that was singled out to try and externalize the root causes of any potential discontent. And so if some of the measures continue to fail to really resolve the sort of transmission of COVID-19, we could see an issue developing. And we already saw that to some extent in Saudi Arabia, where initially they were blaming people, Saudis, for example, who had gone to Iran, who had kind of returned through third countries and who allegedly had kind of gone in defiance of Saudi government wishes. I think it was no coincidence that the first city in Saudi to be locked down was Qatif in the eastern province. So we could see potentially a sort of widening of sort of the blame game as well. We've already seen on social media how there have been attempts to sort of pin the blame on this crisis on Qatar, on Iran, on various other countries as well. So this crisis should bring people closer together. It should put things into perspective. It should show that coordination is the way forward. But if it goes badly, if it goes wrong, and if governments are looking for external scapegoats to try and deflect attention away from their own policies that don't produce results, then it could also have the opposite effect. And we could see those widening of fissures and inequalities, which could make the Gulf an even more sort of unstable place in the medium, at least in the medium term. So with that, I'll pass you back to Jean-Marc.